The airport buzzed with life, announcements echoed through the halls, the rhythmic hum of hurried footsteps blending into the steady murmur of travelers. Near the boarding gate, Maya and Mila Robinson, twin sisters dressed in matching pink dresses, clutched their boarding passes tightly. Their eyes sparkled with excitement. This was their first time flying alone, a trip they had been looking forward to for weeks. But that excitement faded, quickly. A sharp voice cut through the noise. "Those bags won't fit in the overhead compartment." Maya blinked, glancing up at the woman who had spoken. Addison Riley, a seasoned flight attendant with a neatly tied bun and a crisp uniform, stood before them. But it wasn't her polished appearance that stood out. It was the coldness in her eyes. "But our dad measured them," Maya said hesitantly, her voice quieter than she intended. "They meet the size requirements." Addison crossed her arms and offered a tight-lipped smile, one that never quite reached her eyes. "Well, your dad isn't here, is he?" Maya and Mila exchanged a look. Something about this felt off. Other passengers, some with bags much larger than theirs, strolled past without a second glance from Addison. "We can try putting them in the overhead bin," Mila suggested, keeping her voice steady. "If they don't fit, we'll check them." For a split second, something flickered across Addison's face. Tension? Hesitation? But she recovered quickly. "That won't be necessary. The decision has been made." The camera would have panned out to capture the scene. Businessmen with oversized roller bags, families loaded with stuffed carry-ons, all walking past, unquestioned. Maya and Mila didn't know it yet, but this single decision would change everything. Their excitement now replaced with unease. Maya and Mila stood frozen for a moment. Their father, Marcus Robinson, had meticulously measured their bags before sending them off, making sure everything met the airline's guidelines. So why was this flight attendant telling them otherwise? "But our dad was sure these were the right size." Maya tried again, her voice laced with uncertainty. "Your dad isn't here." Addison's tone sharpened, her gaze locked onto them, unwavering. Mila instinctively squeezed her sister's wrist. She didn't like the way Addison was looking at them, as if they had done something wrong just by standing there. "Can we at least try placing them in the bin first?" Mila asked, keeping her voice calm, just like their dad had taught them. "If they don't fit, we'll check them." Addison didn't flinch. She stood firm, arms crossed, her tone as unyielding as stone. "That won't be necessary. The decision has been made." The decision has been made. The words sat heavy in Mila's stomach. If this was truly about airline policy, why not let them try? And more importantly, why weren't the other passengers being questioned like they were? Maya's eyes flickered toward the boarding line. A middle-aged man in a gray suit effortlessly rolled a huge suitcase onto the plane, unchecked. Further down, a family with 3 young children carried bulky duffel bags, yet no one stopped them. Only them. Only the 2 black girls in pink dresses were being singled out. "Can we at least take out our books?" Maya asked, her voice softer now, trying to keep the frustration from showing. "We were planning to read during the flight." Addison arched a brow, then let out an exasperated sigh as she glanced at the growing line behind them. "You're holding up the boarding process. Tag the bags and move along." Maya bit her lip, not wanting to make things worse. Mila gripped her bag's handle, pressing her lips into a tight line. They had no choice. They watched as their carefully packed luggage disappeared down the conveyor belt. A knot formed in Maya's chest. Something wasn't right. And in just a few minutes, that uneasy feeling would become a full-blown nightmare. Right now, all they could do was follow what their father had always told them. Stay calm, follow instructions, and call him the moment they landed. They had no idea this flight would change everything. As Maya and Mila stepped onto the plane, their hearts felt heavier than before. This wasn't how today was supposed to feel. Mila turned back for one last glance at the baggage counter, where their suitcases had vanished. "Dad's not going to be happy about this," she whispered as they walked down the aisle. "Dad always tells us to stay calm and follow instructions. We did everything right." Maya reassured, though deep down, she wasn't entirely sure anymore. The twins made their way to seats 14A and 14B, the ones their father, Marcus, had reserved well in advance. As soon as they sat down, they exhaled in relief. At least the flight was still happening. They would still make it to Atlanta, or so they thought. The steady click of heels against the carpeted aisle grew louder. Addison Riley stopped beside them, her expression unreadable, yet unmistakably firm. "You're in the wrong seats." Her tone wasn't questioning, it was absolute, as if she was already convinced they had made a mistake. Maya frowned, quickly reaching into her pocket and pulling out their boarding passes. "No, these are our seats, 14A and 14B. She held up the tickets, her voice more confident than before. Addison snatched the passes, glanced at them briefly, then, without a word, thrust them back, and walked apology. No explanation. Mila watched her leave, a strange, uneasy feeling settling in her stomach. She couldn't put it into words, but one thing was clear. They were being treated differently. Maya felt it too, but she said nothing. Instead, she slid her backpack under the seat, fingers gripping her phone about to text their dad. But then, she saw it. Just 3 rows ahead, a white family with 3 young children had just boarded. The mother struggled to keep her youngest, a boy around 5 years old, in his seat. He bounced up and down on the cushion, refusing to fasten his seatbelt. The other 2 kids ran up and down the aisle, giggling and pushing each other. Maya glanced at Mila. They almost got kicked off over a carry-on bag, yet these kids were causing chaos and no one seemed to mind. Then, Addison approached the family. Maya tensed, expecting a strict warning like the one she and Mila had received. Instead, Addison smiled. "Wow, looks like someone's excited to fly. Let me help you get settled, buddy." Her voice was soft, warm, patient. Nothing like how she had spoken to them. Mila's fingers clenched around her backpack strap. She wasn't someone who got angry easily, but this wasn't fair. "Did you see that?" Mila whispered, her gaze locked on the scene in front of them. "I saw." Maya's voice was barely audible. They didn't need to say anything else. It was painfully obvious. The difference in how they were treated, the way Addison looked at them, the injustice they couldn't quite prove but could feel deep in their bones. And yet, they had no idea. This was only the beginning of their nightmare. Maya and Mila tried to ignore the unease creeping into their chests. They pulled out their tablet, launching their favorite game, desperately trying to recapture a sense of normalcy. But something felt different. The atmosphere in the cabin had shifted. More passengers boarded, the overhead compartments slammed shut, and the captain's voice crackled through the speakers. "This is your captain speaking. Flight 423 to Atlanta will be departing shortly." Maya caught Mila's eye, offering a silent reassurance. Maybe it was over. Maybe everything would be fine. Mila wasn't so sure. And then, it happened. Mila reached into her backpack for her water bottle, accidentally bumping Maya's bag, sending it sliding into the aisle. It was a small accident. But Addison pounced on it, her voice cut through the cabin like a whip. "I told you to stay seated." Maya flinched, startled by the sheer sharpness of Addison's tone. She immediately reached down to grab her bag, her wide eyes looking up in confusion. "I'm sorry, it was just an accident." But Addison didn't let her finish. "This is the second time you've disrupted this flight." Her voice was cold, leaving no room for explanation. Mila looked up, her eyes burning with defiance. "We weren't causing trouble. It was just a small accident." But Addison had already made up her mind. "I need both of you to come with me. Now." Maya's heart pounded. We didn't do anything wrong." Addison folded her arms across her chest, her tone unwavering. "You failed to follow instructions. Your behavior is disruptive to the safety of this flight. The captain has been informed." The words fell like a verdict. Passengers nearby turned their heads. Some whispered. Others averted their eyes, pretending not to notice. An elderly woman sitting close by nodded in approval, as if Addison was doing the right thing. Mila blinked, stunned. The captain agreed? Over a backpack falling to the floor? "Do not argue with flight crew," Addison said, loud enough for those around them to hear. "It is a federal offense." Maya and Mila froze. When had sitting quietly in their assigned seats become a federal offense? "Can we call our dad?" Maya's voice trembled. "Once you're off the plane." Addison's response was swift and final. She gestured for them to stand. With no other choice, Maya and Mila gathered their things in silence, their eyes burning with unshed tears. Every step down the long aisle felt like a walk of shame, their small feet sinking into the carpet as they made their way toward the exit. They had no idea that a passenger had been quietly recording the entire incident. And they certainly didn't know that at that very moment, their father, Marcus Robinson, was signing the final paperwork to acquire Skyward Airlines, the very company that had just humiliated his daughters. The storm was about to break. Maya and Mila stepped onto the jet bridge, their emotions a tangled mess of confusion and humiliation. They had just been kicked off their very first flight alone, and they had no idea why. The long hallway leading back to the gate felt empty and endless, their footsteps the only sound echoing through the space. A uniformed airport staff member walked ahead, motioning for them to follow. Addison, meanwhile, said nothing. She turned without a backward glance, slipping back into the cabin as if nothing had happened. But it had happened. And the world was about to know. Maya collapsed into one of the plastic airport chairs, gripping her phone so tightly her fingers ached. Her hands shook as she dialed. Mila stood beside her, biting her lip, trying to keep herself from crying. "Dad." Maya's voice cracked as the call connected. Across the country, Marcus Robinson sat in a high-rise conference room, surrounded by a table full of executives, lawyers, and shareholders. In his hand, a pen hovered over the last signature line of the biggest deal of his career, one that made him the majority owner of Skyward Airlines. He had no idea that just minutes earlier that same airline had thrown his daughters off a plane. "Hey, sweetheart, has your flight taken off yet?" Maya swallowed, trying to keep her voice steady. "No, we got kicked off the plane." The room fell silent. Marcus's grip on the pen tightened, his jaw clenched. "What?" The tension in his voice was unmistakable. Across the table, executives exchanged nervous glances, sensing something had just gone terribly wrong. "What happened?" he asked, his voice dangerously low. Mila held the phone tighter, struggling to explain. "The flight attendant said we were disruptive, but we weren't. We were just sitting there, Dad. We didn't do anything wrong." Marcus rose from his seat, the papers in front of him now forgotten. His normally calm expression turned to stone. "I'm coming." Hooked to keep the audience engaged. The camera zooms in on Marcus's phone as a notification pops up, a video link from an unknown number. The title reads, "Skyward Airlines kicks 2 black girls off a plane without reason." Marcus clicks on the link, and then he watches. He sees his daughters, his little girls, being marched off the plane, their faces humiliated, their voices unheard. His entire body stiffens. Slowly, Marcus Robinson sets his pen down. The deal was done, but now he had bigger business to handle. "I need to leave. Right now." Meanwhile, high above the clouds, Flight 1423 raced toward Atlanta. Inside the cockpit, Captain Benjamin Hayes glanced at his control panel as a new message came through from air traffic control. He read it once, then again. "Directive from Executive Command, divert flight, return to departure airport immediately." Hayes frowned. In 30 years of flying, he had never seen a reroute order come directly from the airline's executive command. "What the hell is going on?" he muttered, tightening his grip on the controls. Back in the cabin, Addison Riley had no idea that in just a few minutes, her entire world was about to change. The sharp beeping of the intercom echoed through the cabin. Addison, who had just finished setting up the beverage cart, exchanged a glance with her colleague before picking up the receiver. "Riley speaking." From the cockpit, Captain Hayes' voice came through, calm, firm, authoritative. "Prepare for landing. We're turning back." Addison froze. "Turning back? Is there a mechanical issue, Captain?" A brief silence. "Not mechanical. Orders from the top." "Orders from the top?" Addison's brow furrowed. In all her years as a flight attendant, she had never heard of an executive-level order forcing a flight back. She set the phone down, forcing herself to maintain composure. But as she stepped out into the aisle, she felt the shift. Eyes watching her. Passengers in first class were glancing in her direction, some whispering to one another, others casting her looks of suspicion. Something was wrong. A businessman in the front row, middle-aged, well-dressed, looked down at his phone, then back at her. His face was a mix of disbelief and judgment. "Have you seen this?" he asked, holding out his screen. On it, a video was playing. A video with over 500,000 views in just 20 minutes. A video of her, of Maya and Mila, of the 2 little black girls in pink dresses being escorted off the plane by her. Addison's stomach dropped. She scanned the screen, her breath catching as she read the comments. "This is blatant discrimination. Why were these two little girls removed when other disruptive passengers stayed? Skyward Airlines needs to be held accountable. How is this still happening in this day and age? Her heartbeat hammered in her chest. The video was spreading like wildfire. And then another voice rang out, this time from across the aisle. A woman in her 40s, with curly brown hair and piercing eyes, locked onto Addison with a look of disgust. "Do you even realize what you did?" she said, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. Addison straightened her shoulders, forcing her voice to remain steady. "Please let me do my job." But she could feel it. The temperature in the cabin had changed. The power she once held on this flight was slipping away. Passengers were no longer looking at her with the silent respect they usually gave flight attendants. Instead, they were watching her like she was the story. Some murmured under their breath. Others pulled out their phones, recording her. The control Addison had always maintained on her flights was unraveling. At the same time, inside Skyward Airlines headquarters, Caroline Weber, head of customer relations, was in full crisis mode. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing. On her screen, Skyward racism was trending #1 nationwide. "We have a problem," an assistant said urgently. Caroline turned to her computer monitor, where the video of Maya and Mila being kicked off Flight 1423 was now being broadcast across major news outlets. 2 million views. 40 minutes. And then, the office door burst open. Marcus Robinson walked in. Marcus Robinson's face didn't show rage. It was far more terrifying than that. He was cold, calculated, dangerous. "Take me to my daughters." His voice was measured, unwavering. Now. Caroline Weber swallowed hard. The storm had arrived, and there was no stopping it. Inside the airport lounge, Maya and Mila sat silently on the hard plastic chairs, their eyes fixed on the dull blue carpet beneath their feet. Around them, passengers whispered, but the twins heard none of it. Maya pressed her lips together, her fingers clutching her phone. The screen lit up with a text from their father. "I'm on my way. Stay where you are." A small sense of relief settled in her chest, but her heart still pounded. Mila looked over at her sister, her eyes filled with unspoken questions. "Why us, Maya?" Her voice was soft, but laced with something deeper. Hurt? Maya swallowed hard. She knew why. Their parents had prepared them for moments like this. For the times when the world would see their skin before their humanity. But knowing and experiencing were two very different things. And now, Maya felt it. A weight in her chest. A hollow ache she didn't know how to name. She had never felt smaller in her life. The lounge doors swung open. Marcus Robinson walked in. He didn't run. He didn't rush. But his presence swept through the room like a storm. Maya and Mila shot up from their seats, running straight for their father. "Dad?" Mila's voice cracked as she launched herself into his arms. Marcus held them tight, his grip firm, protective. His eyes darkened as he took in their confused, shaken faces. "I'm here now. You're safe." His voice was low, steady, but behind it, anger churned beneath the surface. He knew. Everything was far from okay. Behind him, Caroline Weber entered, tense and cautious. "Mr. Robinson, first, I want to offer my sincerest apologies." "I don't need an apology." Marcus cut her off, his voice like steel. Caroline hesitated, forcing herself to stay composed. "We've recalled the flight crew. They are on their way back now." Marcus tightened his hold on his daughters. "You think I care about meeting the flight crew?" He turned to Caroline, his gaze piercing. "I want to speak to the woman who threw my daughters off that plane." The flight attendant. Now. Caroline hesitated for only a second before nodding quickly. "She's on her way." Marcus took a deep breath, kept his jaw tight, his body rigid. He forced himself to stay calm, but inside his fury burned like wildfire. They had humiliated his daughters, and now they would face the consequences. Not far away, down the long airport corridor, Addison Riley walked through a sea of eyes. Whispers trailed behind her. Phones were raised. People were watching. For the first time in her career, she wasn't in control. She was about to face Marcus Robinson. And for the first time ever, she was afraid. In her entire career as a flight attendant, Addison Riley had dealt with difficult passengers, tense situations, heated arguments, but never had she stood in the middle of a storm like this. And this storm had a name: Marcus Robinson. He stood in the center of the airport lounge, deadly calm. At his side, the two little girls in pink dresses, the ones Addison had thrown off the plane, watched her with wide eyes. Around them, passengers kept recording. Some whispered. Others stood still, watching in silence. Addison swallowed, trying to regain her professionalism. "Mr. Robinson, my name is irrelevant." Marcus's voice was quiet but sharp as a blade. "What matters is that my daughters were humiliated on a flight operated by the airline I just bought." The words hit like a shockwave. Addison felt her entire body go rigid. She had heard rumors that Skyward Airlines had a new owner, but no one had told her that he was the father of the 2 children she had just removed from the plane. A cold wave of panic washed over her, but she couldn't afford to show weakness. She straightened, clearing her throat, clinging to her last shred of authority. "I was just following protocol, sir." Marcus let out a short, quiet laugh, but there was no humor in it. "Let me remind you, Miss Riley," he said smoothly. "A family with 3 rowdy children disrupted this flight, and you helped them buckle their seatbelts," with a smile. "Meanwhile, my daughters, who sat quietly in their assigned seats, were labeled disruptive." His voice wasn't raised, but it carried. Across the lounge, everyone could hear. Addison felt all eyes on her. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Marcus took a step forward. "You don't need to explain yourself." His voice was still ice cold. "I want only one thing." Addison's throat tightened. "What?" "Look my daughters in the eyes," Marcus said, each word deliberate, "and tell them you were wrong." There was no escaping it, no hiding behind company policy or procedure. Only the truth. The room fell into suffocating silence. Maya and Mila stood still, watching, and Addison felt something heavy settle inside her. A cruel, undeniable recognition of what she had done. She had believed she was simply doing her job. But looking at the hurt in these children's eyes, she saw the truth. She had made them feel like they didn't belong. She took a deep breath. The entire lounge seemed to hold its breath with her. And then Addison spoke. Her voice was small but clear. "Maya, Mila, I was wrong." The girls didn't blink. "I shouldn't have done that to you. I wasn't fair." A long silence followed. Then Marcus nodded. He turned to Caroline Weber. "Miss Weber, I expect a full executive board meeting first thing tomorrow morning. There is a lot that needs to change." Caroline nodded immediately. And Addison? She knew that her life would never be the same again. Marcus Robinson sat at the head of the conference table, his gaze sweeping across the tense faces of the airline's executive board. They all knew why they were here. Caroline Weber had been prepared to open the meeting, but Marcus spoke first. "Yesterday, my daughters were removed from a Skyward Airlines flight for no reason." He paused, letting the words settle. "And it happened because of the color of their skin." No one argued. No one defended themselves. They had all seen the video. "This cannot happen again," Marcus continued. "Not just at Skyward Airlines, but in this entire industry. This is not just a personal incident. This is a systemic failure." He placed a thick folder on the table. "Starting today, we are not just rolling out unconscious bias training as a band-aid solution. We are restructuring Skyward from the ground up." The boardroom fell silent. But everyone in that room understood. This was a turning point. Skyward Airlines was different. Recruitment processes were completely restructured to ensure diversity in flight crews. Every employee, from pilots to flight attendants to executives, underwent training, not just on unconscious bias, but on fair and equal service for all passengers. The industry was watching, and Skyward Airlines was leading the change. Passenger complaint policies were reformed, transparent and fair, ensuring no one was treated unjustly because of their background or the color of their skin. And then something unexpected happened. Addison Riley wasn't fired. Instead, she was reassigned to a special training program, one designed to dismantle unconscious bias and address discrimination in the aviation industry. She was no longer just an enforcer of flawed policies. She was becoming part of the change. Addison didn't expect to see them again so soon. But there they were, Maya and Mila. The twins sat among a group of trainees, listening intently to a lesson about fair treatment of passengers. As Addison entered the room, they turned to look at her. Maya offered a small smile. "Miss Riley." Addison's throat went dry. She hesitated before stepping forward. "I didn't think I'd see you two again so soon." Mila tilted her head, then asked a question Addison would never forget. "Dad says everyone deserves a second chance." She paused, her gaze steady. "Are you making the most of yours?" There was no accusation in her voice, only a reminder. Addison pressed her lips together, then nodded. I'm trying, Mila. Every day. And for the first time in years, Addison Riley felt like she was finally doing the right thing. Marcus Robinson stood on a grand stage, addressing an audience filled with aviation executives, policymakers, and industry leaders. Today, I'm not just here to talk about Skyward Airlines, he said. I'm here to talk about the entire airline industry. In the front row, Maya and Mila watched their father speak. We cannot change the past, but we can decide how we move forward. The room erupted into applause. Not polite applause, not corporate formality. This was applause for real change. Maya and Mila boarded a plane once again, but this time, no one stopped them. No suspicious stares. No questioning their right to be there. No silent humiliation. Just two passengers on a flight, and a sky wide open before them. This was not just a personal victory for two young girls. It was the beginning of something bigger. A single moment of injustice had sparked a movement for change. And it all began with two little girls in pink dresses. Some stories aren't just fleeting moments. Some stories become turning points. They become reminders. Today, we've witnessed a journey. From injustice to change. From pain to progress. From a small moment on a single flight to a revolution in an entire industry. But the story of Maya and Mila isn't just about two little girls in pink dresses. It's about all of us. How we see the world. How biases can exist, sometimes so deeply buried that even we fail to recognize them. And most importantly, how we choose to change. If this story resonated with you, leave a comment below. Have you ever witnessed injustice? Do you believe that one small action can create a ripple of change? Let's talk. Let's share. Let's keep this conversation going. And if you want to hear more powerful, emotional stories, stories that challenge perspectives and remind us of the world we want to build, hit that subscribe button now. Like this video, share it, because sometimes all it takes is a moment, a pause, a willingness to listen, a choice to understand, to change everything. See you in the next story, only on Aiva Stories.